This koi fish is unsettling thousands of people online because its markings look disturbingly human. The effect is so convincing that many viewers say it triggers the uncanny valley, the same discomfort people feel when something looks almost human but not quite. This fossil is so rare that it only forms in a handful of places on Earth under perfect conditions. This is a coral geode created when an ancient coral colony was slowly replaced by minerals over millions of years while crystals grew inside. The result is one of the rarest and most beautiful fossils ever discovered. For a few minutes each year, the setting sun lines up perfectly with Horsetail Fall in Yosemite, causing the water to glow bright orange and creating the illusion that molten lava is pouring from one of the most famous cliffs in America. Photographers travel from all over the world hoping to witness it, but many leave empty-handed when weather or clouds ruin the effect. When everything finally aligns, the mountain briefly looks like it's erupting. Just a few minutes later, the illusion disappears as quickly as it arrives. Oliver Tree has reportedly died after two helicopters collided mid-air over Rio de Janeiro, Brazil on June 14, 2026. The 32-year-old musician spent years building a career around chaos, fake retirements, outrageous stunts, and songs about heartbreak, self-destruction, and disaster. This time, however, the catastrophe was very real. The helicopters crashed into an electric vehicle storage yard, where the wreckage ignited a massive fire that spread to at least 20 cars. All 6 people on board the aircraft were killed. Videos appearing to show the collision and aftermath have begun circulating online, with many outlets declining to share the footage because of its graphic nature. Oliver released a new album just a few weeks ago and was in the middle of a world tour. Best known for viral hits like Life Goes On and Miss You, he died just 2 weeks before his 33rd birthday as investigators worked to determine what caused the tragic collision. Jerry, better known online as Gazelle Beauty, was born with megalocornea, an extremely rare genetic disorder that causes the corneas to grow far larger than usual. The condition gave Jerry unusually large eyes from birth, leading many childhood photos to go viral because of their unsettling appearance. While often mistaken for a cosmetic trait, megalocornea is a lifelong medical condition that can be associated with vision problems, light sensitivity, and an increased risk of serious eye complications later on in life. The disorder is so rare that very few doctors will ever encounter a patient with it during their entire careers. In 2024, 26-year-old American YouTuber Elliot Eastman repeatedly told his audience he feared armed men would come for him while living in a conflict-prone region of the Philippines. After marrying a local woman and openly documenting his life, income, and whereabouts online, Eastman randomly ended one of his live streams without saying goodbye. Roughly 2 hours later, armed men reportedly arrived at his home, shot him, and abducted him by boat. Despite extensive searches, his body was never recovered, leaving his ultimate fate officially unsolved but widely presumed fatal. For more than 50 years, this man kept a secret so unbelievable that even his own family had no idea who he really was. In 1969, 20-year-old bank teller Ted Conrad stole $215,000 from a bank in Cleveland, equivalent to nearly $2 million today, and simply disappeared without a trace. The FBI spent more than 50 years pursuing leads, making the case one of the longest-running fugitive investigations in U.S. history. But Conrad successfully built an entire new life near Boston under the name Thomas Randell. He eventually married, raised a daughter, became a golf enthusiast, and lived as an ordinary suburban family man while investigators remained unaware of his whereabouts. But in 2021, while dying of lung cancer, he finally admitted to his daughter that he was one of America's most wanted fugitives and begged her to keep it secret. Months after his death, investigators used old documents and genealogy records to confirm his identity, finally closing the case 52 years after the theft. His daughter later revealed the story to the world through a podcast about her father's hidden past. In Maryland Heights, Missouri, 28-year-old Danielle Uskovich was attending the Point Fest Rock Festival when she was accidentally kicked in the head by a crowd surfer during a performance by the band Sleep Theory. At first, she thought she had only suffered a minor injury, but days later she developed severe headaches and was rushed to the hospital where doctors discovered a brain bleed. Danielle subsequently suffered 2 strokes, underwent emergency surgery to remove multiple blood clots and a large amount of blood from her skull, and was placed into a medically induced coma. Despite doctors' efforts, she died 10 days after the incident, just months before her planned wedding. In Poland, a 35-year-old man was recently rushed to the hospital after using an axe to sever part of his own genitals in what he reportedly described as an attempt to eliminate his sexual urges. Emergency responders found him suffering from catastrophic blood loss, and surgeons spent hours performing emergency reconstructive surgery to save his life. Doctors later said the injury carried a high risk of fatal hemorrhaging and permanent complications. Actor Jesse Eisenberg donated one of his kidneys to a complete stranger in 2025 after learning more about the organ shortage crisis. During the operation, doctors discovered the intended recipient had become too sick to receive the transplant, so Eisenberg's kidney was redirected to a different stranger elsewhere in the country. He never learned the recipient's identity, recovered without major complications, and later said he had no regrets, joking that he wished he had more kidneys to give. In 1943, Swiss chemist Albert Hofmann became the first person to intentionally take LSD after accidentally being exposed to it days earlier in a laboratory. Believing the amount was insignificant, he swallowed 250 micrograms, a dose now considered to be extremely powerful. Within a few hours, Hoffman was plunged into a waking nightmare. He experienced overwhelming hallucinations, felt his body and mind breaking apart, became convinced he'd been poisoned, and feared he was permanently losing his sanity. At one point, he believed he was dying and that the world around him had transformed into something sinister and unrecognizable. The 6-hour ordeal became the first documented LSD trip in history and is now remembered as Bicycle Day, after the ride home during which the drug's effects had reached their terrifying peak. A childless Brazilian billionaire reportedly left his entire $1.14 billion fortune to soccer star Neymar despite never meeting him. In his will, the businessman said he identified with Neymar personally, admired his relationship with his father, and believed the athlete was not self-serving, making him the sole heir to a fortune worth over $1 billion. The inheritance is reportedly still subject to court approval. A fox that wandered onto thin ice became trapped when the lake froze around it. After it died, people cut the animal free and left its ice-encased body standing upright as a grim warning marker to keep others from venturing onto the dangerous ice. On D-Day, paratrooper John Steele's parachute became tangled on a church steeple in the middle of a firefight, leaving him suspended helplessly above the battlefield for hours. Unable to escape and surrounded by violent gunfire, he survived by hanging motionless and pretending to be dead while soldiers fought and died beneath him. Today, a mannequin hangs from the same steeple to commemorate his ordeal. This was the moment a 5-year-old boy fell into a gorilla enclosure and found himself surrounded by one of the world's most powerful primates. After plunging roughly 15 feet into the gorilla exhibit at Jersey Zoo in 1986, the unconscious child lay helpless on the concrete floor as several gorillas approached. Horrified spectators feared they were about to witness a fatal attack. But instead, the troop's dominant silverback Jambo moved toward the boy and positioned himself between him and the other gorillas. As the child remained motionless, Jambo watched over him, gently stroked his back, and kept the rest of the troop at a distance. For several tense minutes, the 450-pound silverback stood guard over the injured boy while zoo staff prepared a rescue. When keepers finally entered the enclosure, Jambo calmly backed off and allowed them to carry the child to safety. The boy survived with a broken hand and minor injuries, and footage of the incident was broadcast around the world. At a time when gorillas were often portrayed as violent, dangerous beasts in movies and pop culture, Jambo's actions helped change public perception of the species worldwide, showing millions of people a gentler and more protective side of one of humanity's closest relatives. Now at this time, I ask you all to hold a moment of silence for Harambe, who suffered a much more tragic outcome in a similar circumstance. Thank you. Morbid Facts, Part 993. In 2022, Fiona Hooker developed a rare pregnancy complication that essentially made her body allergic to her own unborn baby. At 31 weeks pregnant, a few itchy spots around her belly button rapidly spread into agonizing blisters that eventually covered much of her body. Doctors later diagnosed her with pemphigoid gestationis, a rare autoimmune disorder affecting roughly 1 in every 50,000 pregnancies. They believe genes inherited from her son's father caused her immune system to mistake proteins linked to her baby and placenta as a threat, triggering an aggressive attack on her own skin. The pain became so severe that after giving birth, she struggled to even hold her newborn son without agony. Although the blisters eventually subsided, the condition can flare up again with future pregnancies, hormonal changes, or even her menstrual cycle for the rest of her life. In the early 1900s, New Jersey asylum director Henry Cotton became convinced that mental illness was caused by hidden infections poisoning the brain. To cure his patients, he ordered the removal of teeth, tonsils, stomachs, colons, and reproductive organs, often performing multiple surgeries on the same person. Many patients died from the operations, with some estimates placing the mortality rate at over 45%. Despite the staggering death toll, Cotton spent years promoting the procedures as a medical breakthrough, while dismissing clear evidence that they were killing the very people he claimed to be saving.